Hello, crafters and artisans, and welcome back to Psychedelic Squid Fiber Arts. Today, I'm going to explain what to look for in a used spinning wheel, how to pick out a functioning used spinning wheel, and what to look for when buying a second-hand spinning wheel. I'm going to try to keep this short and concise, but there's a lot to cover. However, I have no doubt if you watch this video from beginning to end, you'll be able to spot a second-hand wheel that'll work with little to no repairs. There are three types of spinning wheels you'll find when you're looking for a used spinning wheel: functional wheels, non-functional wheels, and decorative wheels, also known as spinning wheel-shaped objects. Functional wheels will have no missing parts, no broken parts, and all the parts there will be functional, or in other words, in working order. Functional wheels will also usually have some signs of use or wear. Non-functional wheels are wheels that were at one point functional, but are now no longer working. Non-functional wheels might be missing parts. Some of these are critical, and some of these are not as critical. Some wheels will have broken parts that renders them non-functional. Sometimes these can be fixed, and other times the wheel can't be fixed. Sometimes they'll have non-functioning parts because they've been glued together, again, rendering the wheel non-functional. Sometimes glued wheels can be fixed, but sometimes they can't. Non-functional wheels will usually still have signs of use and wear from when they were still functional, but not always. Decorative wheels are wheels made with the intention that they were never meant to be used. Sometimes they'll have extra parts that don't make sense, such as a lamp or light fixture. Sometimes they'll have bobbins with no grooves for a drive band or brake band. Now, there are functional wheels that have extra parts, such as attached lazy gates or yarn winders, although these are rarer. In some extremely rare cases, there are wheels that actually have two flyers called gossip wheels, but both flyers actually work. Again, these are exceptionally rare and not the norm. Decorative wheels will have things that look similar to these attachments, but they won't actually work. Also, sometimes the wheel can look like it has extra parts and is a decorative wheel, but it really is just assembled wrong. There are also cases of Franken wheels, where two or more wheels were combined together to create the appearance of a functional wheel. Decorative wheels will also have non-functioning parts, such as wood cranks or fixed drive wheels. I'll go more in depth on that in a minute. Decorative wheels will have no signs of use or wear. They might be dirty, but the wheel will usually be in pristine condition. Decorative wheels are also known as spinning wheel-shaped objects, and they were never meant to function, and they can't be made to function without extensive work. Missing parts. Some parts are absolutely critical to the wheel functioning or are just prohibitively expensive to replace. Critical pieces include the mother of all, the maidens and maiden bearings, which sometimes you can remake, but other times you can't. Sometimes decorative wheels are missing the maiden bearings altogether. The flyer, which is super important, can be very pricey to replace. The bobbin, if it's missing, can be hard to replace because you'll have to kind of guess the original size. The whirl on double drive band wheels. The drive wheel tensioner. I've never seen a wheel without one of these, but if it is missing, it'll be difficult to replace. The drive wheel itself, and the treadle. Again, I've only seen a few wheels without a treadle, but they can usually be replaced fairly easily, but not always, which is why I consider it a semi-critical part. Missing parts that are relatively important. They're needed for the wheel to function, but can usually be replaced pretty easily. Like the treadle, if you're a decent woodworker, you can probably make a replacement, but if that skill isn't in your wheelhouse, I would just pass on that wheel. The footman is nice to have, and I've seen people successfully replace it with a string or cord, but it's a pretty straightforward piece to make if you work with wood. The drive band and the brake bands are super easy to replace, you just need the right kind of cord or thread. Crank bearings, if they aren't there at all, it indicates it's a decorative wheel, but sometimes older leather crank bearings just rot away, in which case replacement leather bearings are pretty easy to replace. And lastly, a distaff. They're nice to have, but it won't actually impact the function of your wheel if you don't have it. Personally, I don't find much utility in a distaff, but that's just my personal preference. Parts you want to see missing are extra parts like a lamp or light attachment. Let me make this very clear. I've only ever seen decorative wheels with an attached lamp. I've never seen a functional wheel with a lamp fixture. So if you're looking for a functional wheel and you see a lamp or light fixture attached to it, it's a major red flag. Broken parts. If these parts are present and broken, they're usually difficult for a novice to repair, and I would avoid wheels with these broken parts because if they're not fixed 100% correctly, you'll usually have issues with the wheel, and these parts are also pricey to have remade. These parts are the mother of all, the drive wheel tensioner, the flyer. If the flyer is missing flyer hooks, it's not that big of a deal, those can be replaced fairly easily. The whirl and the crank. The crank is metal, and while sometimes it looks to be intact, they can actually be bent or misshapen from damage. Sometimes these can be bent back into shape, but if the damage is too severe, I would just pass on that spinning wheel. Other broken parts that are easier to repair if you still have all of the original pieces includes the maiden. Honestly, these can usually be glued back together, and while they may be uglier for the repair, they'll still work fine. The footman is pretty easy to repair. The base or table can be repaired easily just as long as it still holds the wheel together, then it's not a huge issue. The legs can usually be glued back together to function just fine. You can always throw in a dowel for strength. The treadle can be fixed fairly easily. And bobbins, even if they're broken, so long as you have a complete bobbin, you can have people 3D print a new one for relatively cheap. Again, if these parts are broken and you're not missing any of the part, then they're relatively easy and forgiving to fix. So, non-functional parts are parts that don't work. Major red flags for decorative parts are the ones that were never intended to function. This includes a wood crank. They should always be metal. A fake orifice that won't allow the yarn to wind onto the bobbin, or a wood orifice. They should be metal. A fake flyer is usually fixed and it doesn't turn or has a wood spindle instead of a metal spindle. A fixed treadle that won't move. A merge flyer bobbin whirl combo. Oftentimes, decorative wheels were made by someone who had a vague idea of what these looked like, so this part ends up being a mix of all those parts instead of individual parts. Fake tensioners that don't turn. Sometimes they're literally just tacked onto the wheel. They should move the mother of all. A fixed mother of all, meaning it doesn't move at all or even have room to move. A fixed drive wheel with no way to easily remove the drive wheel from the drive wheel supports. And fixed maiden bearings. Sometimes the maidens have no bearings and the flyer just goes straight through the wood of the maidens and has no way to be removed and no leather or metal bearings. Other non-functional parts that are more questionable as they were rendered non-functional either through damage or glue. Glued parts make the wheel non-functional. I've seen the mother of all glued down. I've seen the drive wheel tension screw glued in place, the drive wheel glued in place, and the whole flyer assembly glued together. Also, the lack of crank bearings is usually a good indicator the wheel is purely decorative or new ones are needed. Loose parts are usually just loose from the wood being dried out, but sometimes it's because they have hidden damage. Broken parts can render a wheel non-functional, as we covered earlier. Green flags for signs of use and wear are dark oil stains near the crank. You may also see them near the footman and crank connection, near the treadle support, or near the flyer and maidens. Wear marks or cuts on the flyer and orifice from extended use are good signs. Footprints worn into the treadle are also good signs. And if the drive band is present and actually turns the whirl, flyer, or drive wheel is a good sign. Yellow flags for use and wear. Yarn on the bobbin. Yes, if it was functioning it might have old yarn on the bobbin, but a lot of decorative wheels have yarn wound on the bobbin to give it a more realistic look, so this is not always a good indicator that it's a functional wheel. And paint. Some old functioning wheels were painted a long time ago, but a lot of decorative wheels will also have been painted. So if either of these are present, proceed with caution. Now with that knowledge, let's look at some actual examples. First, with any wheel, you should look at the mother of all assembly. Check out the orifice is metal and actually goes through to allow yarn onto the bobbin. Check that the flyer rotates on the maiden bearings. Here you can see me pull on the drive band and watch the flyer and drive wheel spin. Here you can see my crank is metal with brass bearings and the drive wheel spins freely. Now you also want to make sure your drive wheel spins true and level like this wheel. Notice here that even though the wheel spins, it stays in a straight vertical line. Now this one spins level, but it doesn't spin true. It wobbles because the wheel is warped. While this might work, it's likely to kick off the drive band and lead to tension issues. This wheel spins true, but it doesn't spin level. Notice how it's tilted towards the right. This wheel actually drags against the support on the left towards the bottom, which could have numerous causes. Here is a metal crank with a metal bearing and dark stains from being oiled. Here on the other side, you can really see the metal bearing. This is a flyer with cuts in the orifice and flyer from use. It's also missing flyer hooks, but those can be replaced. The chip on the bobbin doesn't impact functionality. Larger chips or cracks can. The whirl has a crack in it, but the whirl still turns the flyer, so it's still functional. Here, looking at the drive band tensioner, you can see that it moves the mother of all as I tighten it or loosen it, and thankfully it isn't glued or fixed in place. Here's a look at another tensioner in action. Here's a flyer missing some hooks, a severely chipped bobbin. This will likely make it non-functional, but you can always order a 3D printed replacement. You can also see a severe crack in this portion of the bobbin. And here you can see my whorl is able to separate from the bobbin and flyer. Also notice the cuts in the flyer from use. Now looking at my Far Maiden, you can see it had a bearing, but when I look closely at it you can see it's fallen apart. This can be fixed, but as it currently is, it won't function. Here is a crack in the base or table. The wheel still holds together fine, so this crack isn't critical. Here you can see a metal crank bearing. Now let's test your knowledge. Pause the video and take a good look at this wheel and tell me what's wrong with it. If you said it's missing the flyer, bobbin, whorl, and a maiden, you'd be correct. These are expensive to replace and you're better off finding a wheel that already has it. If you said the drive wheel is cracked or separating, you're also correct. Bonus points if you notice it's missing a footman. I wouldn't pay for this wheel in this condition. Luckily for me, this one was free and makes for a great example. This crack completely takes away the drive wheel's integrity and will probably cause issues if not fixed. The crank is metal, and did you notice the leather bearing? This wheel was once functional, but due to the damage and missing parts, it's no longer functional. On this same wheel, there's a large crack on the base, and it's substantial enough that the drive wheel support is loose. Looking at it from another angle, you can see the whole base is split. Please leave any questions in the comments section below, and thank you all so much for exploring the depths of your creativity with me, and I'll see you next time!